Okay, so we're going to start with a little bit of review, and I just want to ask you if you were just going to tell me a summary of chapter 1, really just using those 5 W's and an H question. Let's walk through if we could just say what chapter 1 was about. So if I said, who is it about? Who would you say?
Ezekiel's vision was,
Said who?
who? Ezekiel.
Yeah, Ezekiel. Keep it to that part because we'll get the other ones. So Ezekiel, you could maybe have Ezekiel and God right now. What is it about?
Vision.
The vision. And if you wanted to, this is where you could put just a little bit more of the detail. What is the vision about? Some of you might have wanted to put this in the who, but it's really the what. What's the vision about?
The living beings
The 4 living beings, and then you could add the other
and
things.
wheels. Yeah.
Yeah, you could put the wheels, but if we get towards the end, he's got the 4 living beings, and then what else? What's part of his vision?
The expanse.
The expanse, which has what in it?
The throne
The throne and
of the God.
And
Of God.
an appearance of a man.
the appearance of a man. And you could put that at this point,
Oh,
however you wanted to describe it. Now, do we know when this is taking place?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Anybody
We do.
remember? Did anybody put the year in their notes? Because you could use what's in the scripture, but we found the year last week.
593.
Yeah,
593.
593 BC. That's on your timeline, so that makes it easy to stick with 593. Where is it taking place?
Chaldea.
They're in exile.
In exile,
River Chabar.
in Chaldee, and by the river Kibar. Good. And if I was to ask you what's the how, what we would want to think is the how that we know right now is how does this vision come about, or how does he see what he sees? Where does it come from? God, where does it tell us that?
Verse 3.
Yes.
Chapter 1, verse 3.
That's right. The word of the Lord, right? So we know this is not just some made up crazy dream that Ezekiel had. The scripture tells us it's a word from the Lord, and he saw visions of God. And then he went on. Now, what about why? Do we really know yet why God is giving Ezekiel this vision?
Not yet, but it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah.
Chapter 3.
If you've been reading chapter 2 and 3, you actually do know the why, but I wouldn't say that we see it here. So that's as simple as a summary can be. And if you do another chapter of the Bible somewhere on your own, and you're thinking, well, how do I write out like this whole paragraph summary? Try it this way. Well, who was it about? What was it about? Where, when, why, and how? And then you'll have it covered. So we've got it down, but we're still looking at the details. So if you wanted to kind of check your understanding, this was actually number 1 in your day 3 homework, but you were able to do it, I think most of you probably, without looking. So let's review. We got through verse 10 in our description of the living beings. We had talked about all these details about Ezekiel and where he is and all that. We've covered that. What about these beings? What are some of the things that you remember or you can see in your drawing just up through verse 10?
4 faces.
Okay, 4 faces. Wow.
4 wings.
Yeah.
Hoofs.
Human form.
Human form, which is something we have to remember, right? They had a human form. Their appearance was a human form, he said. No matter the other things attached to it, we're supposed to picture them as human in shape and size and form. I don't know about size for sure.
Straight legs and hooved feet.
Yeah, so then they add the details, right? And he says like. So when we noticed all the words like and resembling and appearance, what does that mean to us, that this word from Ezekiel that the Lord shared with him as he sees this vision? Why does he continually use this comparison word of like?
Because he's never seen it before.
He's never seen it before. And is it possible then that even what he tells us when we don't understand how to draw it or how to visualize it, is that because he didn't know how to describe it as well? So
Sure.
you can remember that imagine you're Ezekiel and you actually don't have to put it into drawing. You have to put it into words. You've seen this and now you have to try and put it out to the people. You have to get it out there of what you saw, right? Any other details we want to grab before we start with verse 11?
They had human hands under their wings.
Right.
Okay. Yep. And we have a detail about the faces.
Oh,
Yeah. A face of a
Lion.
lion, bull, an eagle, and a man.
Okay. So we have 4-sided faces. And then because of the description of part of the wings, some of us started to wonder, do I also have a 4-sided being? Now, if you did look online or at pictures and imagery, some people do it that way and some people don't. It's
Right.
very hard to capture that. Also, then I had questions today. Well, is that the right number of wings then if I've made a 4-sided being? Because it says 4, 2 above and 2 below. So I don't really know for sure, and we don't have to. It is just to try to get the imagery in your mind. Any questions or thoughts just up through verse 10, and then we'll get started on the rest. Okay, we covered it pretty thoroughly. Go ahead. Yep, who's talking? No? Is that reverberation? Okay, so go ahead and take out chapter 1, and we will start with verse 11, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll bring up the graphics, and you can kind of see how I adjusted them as I went along and separated out parts, and then by the end, tried to kind of put it all back together. So I'm just going to call on you in order. Again, as I see you, Shan, are you okay to read just verse 11 for us?
Sure.
Alrighty.
Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had 2 touching another being and 2 covering their bodies.
Okay, so we have a little bit more detail about that. So this one, we already had a verse that said 2 of their wings touched their own, they touched themselves on the being. Now, this is where, when I first was working with this a couple weeks ago, I went, oh, wait a minute, because I had them in a certain order. And then when I looked at this, that each of the wings had 2, each being has 2 wings touching another being. Can they be in a straight line then? They can't, but you'll see
No, they-
renditions of this online. They have to be sort of like what we'll show you here. Or
like maybe a
however you
circle.
need it. A circle or a cube. And this was what I tried to show the,
Oh.
I'm not showing you guys. Let's share the screen. I tried to put more realistic wings on here. And I also used the tools online to try to get the perspective on there. So this would be how they are. Now, sometimes what I'm thinking is this might be what one being looks like, and then you'd have this times 4, but I'm really not sure of that. But I had them originally lined in a straight line. And then I read that verse and went, well, the 2 end people, their wings don't touch anybody else. So that changed that. Thoughts or questions? It's just one idea. There's their straight legs and their calf hooves. So, I was going to leave that open like I did last week. Okay. that's really all we know from verse 11. So if, let's see, Sarah Sanchez, would you read verse 12 for us, please?
Sorry. Yeah. Verse 12. And each went straight forward. Wherever the spirit was about to go, they would go without turning as they went.
Okay, so some of this information we had before, we got a new word thrown in here, and then we probably had some questions. So first I'll show you how I tried to represent the fact that spirit was part of this now. So what do we know about what it says about the spirit in that verse? What's
Well,
the
it was
relationship?
moving. Wherever it went, they went.
Yeah, so who's directing the movement?
Spirit.
The spirit. So I just did that with part of my sort of spirit
Yeah.
leadership. And then we remembered that the heads, we were told before, don't turn. They just go forward and back or to the side. So whichever head is facing that way already would be the leader. Now I have them angled here. So I tried to think of another way for us to kind of envision this. And I thought about, well, if we see cars at a four-way stop is sort of the picture. I didn't get that exactly, but if you look here, and I tried to make it so they just had one wheel each, because otherwise, so if this is the front of the car facing that way, and they wanted to go that way, the spirit said they would just go. If it was that way, that car would lead, and then the whole thing would just move without turning, right? It's just going back and forth. So I think everybody kind of had that, but I thought, well, let me try to put a wheel on it and see in something that might be more graphic and not so interesting as these poor beings. So hard to wrap our brains around. Okay, did we get everything from, all right, spirit. We had some discussion about that when we did our marking. Did anybody look to see what's our question here about the word spirit?
It's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, is it? Like, that's our question. Is it the Holy Spirit? Now, sometimes when we're reading the version we read, sometimes we don't have to guess. Why is that?
Capitalize the S.
It's capitalized. So was it capitalized here?
No.
No, but does that necessarily mean it isn't the Holy Spirit?
No.
No. What it mostly probably means is that the writers of that translation did not want to make that determination for sure. I'm not really sure why not, because I looked in the concordance. Did anybody else do that? Okay. Would somebody want to share with us what they got when you went to the concordance, and did you find a verse that related, or not a verse, a part of the definition that related exactly to Ezekiel? So what's the word? Somebody want to share with us? Let me take it off.
Oh, I
Did
did
somebody
do
get
that.
it in the Hebrew? Does somebody have it in front of them? I've got it. If you don't, I'll go back to
Oh,
share.
do it.
me-
I have
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the,
Ruah.
yeah, it's
Oh.
number 7307. And when you first look at it, it says breath, wind, or spirit. So that doesn't really fully help us, right?
No.
But what you do is you follow down all the definitions until you find the verse that we're in. So here I've highlighted it in yellow. Here's Ezekiel 1:12, 1:20. Here's a bunch of them. And now it says Spirit of God. And then there's a bunch of other things there. But that is the definition. And here it says, anybody want to read this for me right here?
In the cherubic chariot.
In cherubic chariot. So how is the concordance describing the imagery that we've been looking at? Two words,
There's
right?
a chariot.
Cherubs and a chariot. Now, what does that make you think? If you think about, does that make sense in a way that we
Yeah.
describe it as a chariot? Because it's got four wheels, right?
Yeah.
And
Got
they're
four
familiar
wheels.
with
And the cherubic part, where does that word come from? What do you see in the middle?
angel.
What Well, in the word cherubic, what do you see?
Cherub.
Cherub. So if you didn't know, some of you probably know, there's different classifications of angels, and cherub is one of them. And so you could find this description. So now I have sort of this wow moment going on in my mind, because when I think of angels and chariots, I am immediately reminded of our summer study about whom? Who'd we study this summer?
Elijah.
Elijah.
what's his name?
Elijah. Does Elijah have any relationship to some cherubic chariots, possibly? How?
Yep, because
did
they kept popping him around.
Yeah, well, they didn't pop him around. What did they do with him?
They moved him.
Where?
So they came and got him, took him to heaven.
Took him to heaven. How were they described? What was the phrase used there? There's a movie with this title.
Chariots of
Chariots
fire.
of fire.
Chariots of fire?
Fire. Now, do we have any descriptions of fire mixed into our descriptions of these beings and wheels?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't
Mhm.
that
That
an
is-
interesting thought?
That
So
is something
wow,
else.
talk about a great tie-in.
Give me
Wow.
goosebumps.
And so now we have the possibility of knowing what classification of beings these are. And you could look at the other places in scriptures where you would find the word cherub. You could have a glance at that. But that's where the concordance can help you before you go dashing to commentary, right? Just go look up the word in the original language because it can be really helpful. Okay, so because now it seems to me, after looking at spirit, that seems like it's God's spirit. It could be Holy Spirit. So when I did my drawing, all I did was add my color that I use when I mark this word in scripture, which is the same as God and Jesus. On mine, I have purple filled in with yellow. So I just added that as my reminder that these follow the spirit. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
Let's go on to verse 13. And Deanna, could you read that for us?
Yep. In the midst of the living beings, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire, like torches darting back and forth among the living beings. The fire was bright, and lightning was flashing from the fire.
Again, this is a place where paper does no justice at all to trying, even graphics don't really get the imagery of the movement, but this is just sort of how I pictured lightning. I was really grateful to be using computer graphics for the lightning, because every time I draw lightning, it's horrible. The last time I finished it, I actually just wrote the word kind of jagged. I just wrote lightning. And then here was my representation of darting torches. And we know there's a fire in the center, which I also thought the fact that they weren't in a line anymore sort of helped when you get to verse 13 to be able to put the fire in the midst of them. So now picture these in a cube or square with 4 wheels and all this fire and lightning and light. Does that sound like a chariot of fire, possibly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does to me, right? And now you can sort of picture it. If you think of them in a cube with 4 wheels, wow, we can almost see maybe what Elijah saw and what Ezekiel saw. Fire, lightning, torches. Yeah, that's just a lot of fire and lightning. And on paper, you can actually probably make it more colorful than I did here. Okay, in fact, would somebody, Deanna, would you just go ahead and add verse 14 for us? I don't even know if I tried to attempt adding how this would look, but.
And the living beings ran to and fro like bolts of lightning.
Yeah, it's difficult to show running to and fro. This is my picture, so I don't think I changed it. I could have done more arrows again or something, but now picture them darting to and fro. Like it seemed I don't know, it didn't seem to line up with I mean, what do you think when you think the word dart? What does that do to your imagery?
I was thinking about something that like hovers,
Periods of
you
fire.
know, like, that
Yeah.
can move like
Yeah.
side to side, front and back, but
Yeah.
like in a hovering motion without anything turning, whether it be the heads or other parts. of-
Confirmation.
Yeah,
That it
so
was cherubs.
yeah, I tried looking for pictures of drones or helicopters because both of them sort of do that. Although a helicopter doesn't have like, it doesn't just go backwards, but it does sort of, but I couldn't find anything that really helped. But that imagery of what Sarah's saying is really, but the darting, what does that add to your picture of thinking about how they move? The word dart. I didn't look it up in the Greek Hebrew. That might have been helpful, but
They're fast.
fast,
Yes.
right?
Lightning.
Fast. So now
Move
you're
fast,
thinking of
yeah.
them going without ever turning, going whatever direction they want, and quickly darting to and fro. That's interesting imagery, right?
Hmm.
Okay, that finished the segment with the focus that was just on the beings. Any more thoughts or questions on that? Okay, let's have Mary start our new segment with, oh, I did add this of putting them, in case they are all four-sided, what I ended up with was trying to show them like that, which would be four-sided beings. But again, I'm not sure that that's right. But if we
Well,
did
that's cool. So,
each of them, and then we were about to add the wheels, they would each look like chariots, maybe separately, as well as one big one. Not sure what that means, but anyway, okay, Mary, would you read verse 15 and we'll see what we get added to our picture.
now, as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was one wheel on the earth beside the living beings for each of the four of them.
Okay, Lori, would you read verse 16, because we really need that before you start to
Mhm.
draw, because there's an important detail. Well, a couple of them.
The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling beryl, and all four of them had the same form, their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel were within another.
Okay, so again, that was a place where I had started to draw, and then I read this verse and went, oh, I missed that detail. We have another dimension here
Two
that
wheels.
we didn't have before. So that was initially, I just had these kind of flat wheels was how I had sort of started when I did it on paper, so they have life-saving tires. But really, what they should look like is this.
Yeah.
They're this color because that's the color of that gemstone. That gemstone actually has a more common name today. It's very popular. Anybody know what it is?
Okay.
Sapphire. I think it's sapphire.
Sapphire?
Might be topaz. One of them
My
is sapphire.
favorite.
I think it's this one.
Favorite.
It's blue. Anyway, it's a blue-green color if you look it up. So now we know there's one wheel beside each of them. It's a wheel within another wheel, which is going to make sense when we read the further description of them coming up in verse 17. Lisa R., could you read verse 17, please?
Yes. Whenever they moved in any of their four directions without turning as they moved.
Okay, so just like the faces, and now it makes sense that they have the wheel within a wheel, right? They don't turn either. The one wheel facing one way will lead, or I guess I can share. I don't know if that helps to see what we're thinking about, or the other one. So if it's this way, that one would be going. And I think I tried to flip them around on another sheet. But anyway, they would each go the direction of that. But remember what else I don't have in my picture yet here. Maybe I add it.
The eyes.
There's eyes on here. I don't know if you can see them. This
Oh,
image
uh-huh.
I actually found online. I used it when I was trying to figure out how to draw these things. And these came up. They came up, and I didn't realize they were from Ezekiel till I saw the wheels, the eyes on them. And I was like, oh, somebody was drawing Ezekiel. So
Oh.
these have eyes on the outside.
Chris,
Yeah,
before we go any further, on verse 15,
yeah.
I guess I didn't understand where it says, behold, there was one wheel on the earth beside the living beings.
Yeah. So what we know about them, we're about to see, is do they move at all separately from the beings or always with the beings? Think about this.
It says one wheel on the earth
So let's answer that question. We'll
for
take it
each
a
of
little
them.
further, okay? Okay, Evelyn? Because I want you guys to think about that. If the wheel is on the earth, where are the living beings sometimes?
On the earth.
On the earth.
Oh,
This is what we need to see about this realm, okay? These beings are being described as being on the earth, and we'll see the verse that helps us to see that in just a second, okay, Evelyn?
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering, because I was going, are they on the earth or are they in heaven?
Well, we'll see, okay? All right, let's go on and check that out. So this verse 17 actually helps with that. Janelle, could you read 17? Well, I guess we read 17, right? Would you read 18?
Janelle.
As for their rims, they were lofty and awesome, and the rims of all four of them were full of eyes round about.
So we have the eyes. I really wasn't sure when I read lofty and awesome. Does that mean they're bigger than the beings, or how lofty and how awesome? I'm not really sure, but in my mind, I have a picture of tall wheels. I don't know what to think about lofty, except awesome is what we would imagine. And if this is a sparkling blue gemstone, now picture what they would look like in all this fire, in all this firelight. If you have a sparkling blue-green gemstone, wow, you're just going to have this, right? You're just going to have that kind of sparkle everywhere. It made me really wish I was a graphic designer, because maybe I could have made it all do that. So, but I'm not, as you can tell. So, that's what we know so far. That doesn't help us with Evelyn's question. So, Dee Dee, would you read 19 for us?
Sure. Wherever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them, and wherever and whenever the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels rose also.
So what's that tell you, Evelyn?
Well, they must be on the earth's. I'm just not sure through this vision, though, evidently. I thought it was, when it says at the beginning when the heavens were open, so I kind of just gathered it was a vision in heaven.
Yeah.
But now with this about the earth,
yeah,
unless heaven may just be another realm.
Yeah, heaven may be another realm. Maybe it's not a place. Maybe it's a dimension, right? A place that has a dimension. Does that make sense from what we're told scripturally about it being all around us, and angels and fallen angels being all around us and with us all the time? Wow. Right? Like this is the imagery. Yes. So now he tells us, even though heavens were opened, he says, I saw visions of God. And then he starts to describe by the end, is it back in heaven? Is that what he sees by the end of this chapter? Yes. We'll get there, but yes. But here he's seeing this description of the beings, and he sees them where they are at the moment, which is on the earth. But if the beings go back to heaven, what do the wheels do? They go with them. So now go back to our picture, go back to your idea of a chariot, right? That it's a chariot of fire and wings and faces and wheels that sparkle and fire and lightning. And this chariot darts back and forth wherever it goes. So if you think of them as attached now, that would make sense that the wheels are going to go as well. That's quite a picture.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, go ahead. Somebody have a question or comment?
Just said, wow.
Oh yeah, wow. What about verse 20 then? Amy, would you read verse 20? This is our reminder of who's driving them.
Okay. Wherever the spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction. And the wheels rose close beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels.
Okay, so I tried to add that idea here, and I tried to add sort of the fact that they'd been on the earth just by adding the earth into the picture.
Chariot.
So again, you just keep changing what you do, right? So here's earth so that I know they can actually go up, which is what these are showing. They can go up, but here's that spirit leading and directing them all together. Fire, lightning, sparkling blue wheels, moving like this as much as they want, just like my cursor there, just like that. They're just darting back and forth, just like that. And looking like fire and looking
Why
like
are they doing that?
Fire. Yeah. They're on, doing God's work, maybe.
Because
Okay.
God has
Yeah.
something to say.
Yeah, I'll leave this
Yeah.
up while we look at, let me see if I can see more of you. Who's next? I don't know who is next. Let me stop the share. Evelyn, would you read verse 21? And that'll finish us with this picture. And it just, again, they wanted to make sure we really knew that they were moving in conjunction, right? This was the fun verse.
Whenever those went, these went, and whenever those stood still, these stood still. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose close beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels.
Okay, just that full reminder of it all, led by the Spirit. Spirit's directing. If I know the Spirit's directing, ultimately who's directing where these beings go?
God.
God's directing them through the Spirit to move in the direction that they're to go. Any questions on that segment, on the wheels or the beings or any of that at this moment? Then we get to switch directions, and your pictures probably got a little bit easier to draw after a bit here, sort of. Okay, now we're adding more of their setting to our information. Stephanie, would you read verse 22? Why don't you read 22 and 23 both?
Now over the heads of the living beings there was something like an expanse, like the awesome gleam of crystals spread out over their heads. Under the expanse their wings were stretched out straight, one toward the other. Each one also had two wings covering its body on the one side and on the other.
Okay. Again, I didn't know if that was to change of my picture or not, except I just added the expanse because I don't really know how to continue to try to show wings on sides and things like that. So apparently I had also added some imagery to sort of change my cloud to more spirit-led with a little bit of a cross compass kind of direction. And so I just put this up here for the expanse. Trying to make it sparkly, like it said, like the awesome gleam of crystal over their heads. Now, if you've read the descriptions of things in Revelation, some of these descriptions will sound familiar. Okay, and then their wings stretch straight out. Again, are having them up and still two covering their body. Okay, I'll just leave this up if I can never see who's supposed to read if I do that. Laura, would you read, why don't you read 24 and 25?
Okay. I also heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of abundant waters as they went, like the voice of the Almighty, a sound of tumult, like the sound of an army camp. Whenever they stood still, they dropped their wings. And there came a voice from above the expanse that was over their heads. Whenever they stood still, they dropped their wings.
Okay, and I know that I didn't try to change my drawing to show their wings dropping, but what does that idea do for you when you picture where they are at this moment, where he sees them and what's going on? What do you think of the fact that they drop their wings? Maybe why?
Because
I think about
Rest.
no, if you can hear me.
We can hear you,
Can
but
you
you're
hear me?
yeah. Try again.
Oh.
Try it again, Fran, because you were in clear at the end.
Anyway, I've got great thoughts, but I can't share them.
No, go ahead. You're clear now. Try again. Try to tell us again.
Okay. I was thinking about in the army how you come to to rest, to parade rest after you go you have different different approaches or whatever responses to authority, and so I was just thinking how the angels have lowered their wings when they heard God's voice, and
Yeah.
in a reverent manner.
Yeah, I think that that's awesome. And so if you don't know what to do about adding all these sounds, right? Because now we have sound. They described, again, this is where I do sort of collage things. I did a lot of this when we drew in Revelation. Whoops, instead of sharing, I switched. I just added words and then I added a couple images to, so I have like the voice of the Almighty or these sounds, right? Here's abundant waters, and then this is my representation of the sound of an army camp, right? Here's maybe the drum beat, or I thought about putting marching boots in the picture, right? That would give you that sound of an army camp, whatever you do. And then here in this image, the wings are down and I've got, again, those faces represented, trying sometimes to pull back and forth my reminder of what they really look like. But this sound he hears, he used the word like 3 times in the description of the sound. That should tell us that he can't really fully describe the sound of the Almighty, but what imagery do you get with the pictures that he used? What kind of sound does that sound like to you?
Loud.
Loud, yeah. Roaring, right? If you think of the abundant water part, there's a roar. And that's a very familiar description from Revelation about the voice of the Lord. And then again, army camp, wow, you could either think of marching or you could think of the beat of a drum or and this was the sound of their wings, I also heard of the sound of their wings. This is just the wings make the sound of the abundant waters as they went, which was like the voice of the Almighty. So you guys remember, this is just hitting me when we're in Revelation and at one of the seals, there's silence for half an hour. And before that, we've been hearing all this singing and all of this praising. And now we know it sounds like angels' wings, like abundant water, and there's sound of thunder when you read that. Imagine with all of this sound, I don't know if you picture being if you've been in areas where there's waterfalls, it is really loud if you're at a waterfall, or when the ocean is really churned up, it's loud. We were even at a lake recently and we went around a corner and even just the little wave that was on that lake made sound. Just the majesty. I'm just trying to make myself stop all the time and really try to put as much as I can my experience of what the sounds would be. Yep, Evelyn.
Oh, I was just kind of having my hand up here.
Okay.
But I did. For me, if you've ever been like, or heard like in a cave and all of a sudden there's like a release of bats, and their wings are, flipping.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of. But
Yeah.
I was just kind of going on.
Yeah. That's a good reference too, right? Anything that would give you just that, loud, majestic sound coming through. And I think for those of us that have heard either approaching tornadoes or maybe even the hurricanes, I don't know if they make the same sound, but really strong straight line winds, even you hear that roar that people describe like a train coming. We can all sort of imagine that roar as well of what that might sound like. Or if you picture, again, if you've seen any war movies, the sound of an army marching, especially when they start from a distance and then it gets sort of louder and louder, I think that's a great imagery as well. So now he's seeing them, he sees them in terms of the expanse over their heads. Now it looks to me like they may still be down here, but he's describing the expanse over their heads. And now we're going to see something more about the expanse. So let's go ahead and go on with our reading. And we will have Stephanie, you just read, right? And Laura. Okay, Sarah C, can you read just 26, I guess?
Now above the expanse that was over their heads, there was something resembling a throne, like lapis lazuli in appearance. And on that which resembled a throne, high up was a figure with the appearance of a man.
Okay, so I'm just going to save the final image that I have of this section until we're through with all these. So above that expanse, right? So now we've got an expanse, which you might think was the height, but now he says above the expanse, there's something else, which is what? What's the first thing he describes?
Throne, like a throne.
Yeah, something resembling a throne. So now we don't know if it doesn't look exactly like a throne or if it's such a fancy throne that he needs to say resembling a throne. We're not sure, but even that he can't fully describe by just saying, oh, it was a throne, right? Maybe this is the one that's sapphire. One of these probably is topaz and one is this color, this lapis lazuli. It's also a blue. So the throne is made of what? It probably appears to be this. What is this?
Sapphire.
Yeah, sapphire, or it's a blue gemstone, right? So that would be, now picture that sparkly throne. And then he says, and it says it was high up, and what's on the throne?
Figure with an appearance of a man.
Okay, so again, a human form, an appearance of a man. Fran, are you good to read? Are you coming through, do you think? You want to try to read 27? Or not? All right, we'll just call on Shan. Or is it going to work, Fran? Actually, I see you moving, Fran. Go ahead.
You can hear
Okay, 27.
Then I noticed from the appearance, can you hear me?
Go ahead. You're breaking up a little bit, but we all have it in front of us. We'll talk about it.
Something like glowing metal that looked like fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his loins and downward, I saw something like fire, and there was radiance around.
Okay, so this figure of a man on a throne, what are we going to picture? What's the main addition about his appearance here?
Glowing.
Glowing metal that looked like fire, something like fire, and a radiance around him, right? Again, he can't even fully describe the glow that he sees around him. Now, from this him, we had appearance of a man. And in our text, when we look at the word him, what do we notice?
Capitalized.
It's capitalized. So we know that we have some member of the Trinity here. Okay. And we'll talk about that when we finish the verses. Shan, would you go ahead and read verse 28? That's our last verse for chapter 1.
Sure. As the appearance of the rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard a voice speaking.
Okay, so that's sort of like the cliffhanger there, right? So again, what's the addition of the description here? What's the main picture you think we should have about this figure on the throne?
That he's holy.
Holy, but how is Ezekiel trying to describe that?
Radiance around him.
Radiance. He used that word again in 28, trying to describe how bright a rainbow in the clouds would look on a rainy day, and the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. I just tried to combine all this with some graphics. Again, if we think drawing those beings is difficult, trying to draw the radiance of the glory of the Lord is not exactly easy. But again, with pictures, I just got a picture online of a king that wasn't too cartoony, and then used a circular sort of sun around him so that that glow is all the way around. And that's all I really did with that. And then the expanse down here, and then knowing that he's still up there. So we have him above. And now on my picture that I drew on paper, I have the whole thing. I have him above, and then an expanse, and then the beings down below where he is. Any thoughts or questions? We're going to talk about a few of the words and about what we think and who this is, but any other just general thoughts or questions about the description?
Well, I would just say that whenever I think of radiance, I think of how the sunbeams just sparkle through the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are such awesome reminders of God to me. Every time I see those, I just think, oh, there he is, he's shining through the clouds. Yeah, that's a great imagery. Any pictures like that you could find. It's so easy to find pictures of sunsets and sunrises where those come through, and you could use something like that as well. So let's talk about who I know, and it ultimately, as long as you know we have the Lord, some of you may still end up thinking one way, some of you may think another, and we may not all end up in agreement. I even saw that when I glanced after looking at the concordance, that commentators actually called this hymn a couple different things. Anybody want to say who, if you marked it, you probably wanted to know. So because most of us have different markings for God than we do for Jesus. Where did you guys rate? Anybody want to share how they marked it? Or did you look? Like, did you look it up? If somebody did that, let us know what you found out.
I marked it as Jesus from the context of two things, and this could or could not be accurate, but it says the voice of the Lord, but it doesn't mention him on the throne actually speaking. So I kind of put a question mark to that. It also says that he has an appearance like a man, which to me, it just all tied back to Jesus to me in the context. So,
okay. Anybody want to take the other side?
Yeah. The Strong's word that comes up when you look that up, where it says the Lord is Jehovah.
Yeah.
And I thought of it as being God but it was also kind of confusing because I wasn't too sure about that, but it just seemed right that it would be God because of all that radiance. And there wasn't another throne that said, you know what I mean, a lesser throne or on the right side or anything like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. So those were my thoughts.
Yeah. So that's a good place to go. Yep. I went to the concordance. It is the word that the Hebrews would not write out. So if you look at it, it looks like YVYH. It's Yahweh or Jehovah. It is the Israelite God Jehovah, according to the concordance. Now, why some commentators called it Jesus anyway? I'm not sure. Maybe
3068.
somebody's listening to the pronunciation, so that's nice.
I'm sorry, that was me.
So
which but that was in Strong's. So I'll mark it.
It is. Let me see the number. It's actually number. Oh, that's actually Almighty.
H3068.
Thank you, because I actually had the one for the Almighty too, which is El Shaddai. So I did that's up in the other verse.
Is that Lord that's mentioned in verse 27 then? Glory of the Lord? Or
yeah, let's talk about that one. Go to 28. So before you even go looking, I know a lot of people, because he was able to see him, think, oh, well, nobody got to see God. Well, a few people actually did get to see sort of God in the Old Testament. That's another clue too. We're in the Old Testament. Now, does Jesus make some appearances in the Old Testament? Yep.
Yes.
But when he does, think of every time you know that. Is he on a throne up in heaven? The theophanies in the Old Testament? No, where is he? Where is he? He's down here speaking to people in person, right? So to me, that's another thought. But also, how does Ezekiel describe him in verse 28? Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. So did he fully get to look on God here?
No.
No.
No, he fell on his face.
With the appearance of the likeness, and that was enough that he fell on his face. Now, again, because commentators, Matthew Henry, who I love, being one of them that called it Jesus, again, I'm not going to say, but I personally, again, because of Daniel, Ezekiel, Ancient of Days, when I see a God on the throne, I tend to have it be God. But this time I double checked, and if they use Jehovah, most likely to me, I'm not sure why Matthew Henry thought of it as Jesus, but he wasn't the only one. So other thoughts or questions in that section when you, or putting this whole vision all together?
The whole description of the omnipresence and the omniscience of the with the eyes and the whole description of his power. Not that Jesus doesn't have that too, but I never thought more than it would had to be God, you know. So just and that it's so I mean it's all God is trying to communicate to the Israelites through Elijah. So it's like, or Ezekiel. So it's like, you know, it's got to be God trying to give them some message. And so I don't know. Jesus doesn't usually try to, I don't know, try to think about Jesus trying to direct people so forcefully. You know.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it as well. But definitely, yes, we do know, we believe that people had interactions with Christ in the Old Testament, but they really were literal on the earth. Jesus, you know, those times where 1 second it'll say him and it looks like God, and the next second it says the angel of the Lord. That's because it's the Lord. It actually is Jesus interacting with them down here. Also, if we wanted to stick with the context, what did it tell us Ezekiel sees in verse 1 of this chapter? I saw visions of
God.
God.
Visions of God.
Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't be Jesus in there somewhere. And again, if you leave thinking, well, I marked Jesus and I like it that way, that's fine. You know, ultimately they have some different roles, but that's, I'm sure you're in good company with that as well. All right, let's just
Well, there
think.
might have been the Trinity. The Trinity might have been part of that. You know, we had the
Right,
Spirit
you know,
and God, and
exactly.
it
Could be. You
could
never
be
know.
the
We
power
don't
of the
know.
Trinity.
We don't know, as long as what we know is that Ezekiel got to see into the throne room of heaven and that we get to see it along with them. So let's think about that in terms of how we're going to engage a little bit with application, thinking about my question to make us start to think about it is, why would God give us the detail that we see in chapter 1 of Ezekiel? If you think about God's purposes for things, why do you think he gave us this level of detail?
One day we're going to meet him so that we could see him and know him, know who he is, and I guess know what awaits us.
Okay. Anybody else?
I like what you said about it being all around us, the Spirit's all around us and everything. So I think that's what he's showing us is here's this awesomeness that is all around us, and we need to be more reverent and maybe more aware of what's always all around us.
Yes. Yes. I think that for sure is part of it. And for me, this was why when we were studying Elijah and we saw a very similar picture, though not in this detail, with him. And then I was in the cross references that one day in a different chapter of Ezekiel. And I went back to Ezekiel 1 and I read this description and I just went, this keeps us looking the way we were when we looked at Elijah and Elisha. It keeps us looking at that picture of the glory of the Lord and the radiance and the beings that we're surrounded by. And I felt like this was what we needed to stay here. We needed to stay with this imagery around us. Yeah. So when you think for you, then he's giving you this detail, and Sarah talked about that someday we'll see this in heaven. Dee Dee reminds us that we're supposed to remember it's all around us right now. What purpose then does that serve for you to know these things, to have this detail? And what does it do for your thoughts about God or about the realm around us? What insights or impacts does it have? Because remember, God's looking for you to have some kind of impact. What does it do as you've read and studied this?
I think it is a clear picture of who our God is, that he's awesome and amazing and beyond anything that we can even compare to the natural world. So it's just a peek into our amazing creator and who really is behind us.
Yeah. Is it easy sometimes to forget the magnificence and the glory and the holiness and the separateness of God? So Sarah's, reminding us that this can be an image we put in our minds to make sure that we give God the reverence that he deserves. What about then this terms of what does it do for you now in thinking about the fact that we are so surrounded by this unbelievable realm of spiritual beings, which we know, right? We read it in scripture, we know they're here, we know there's a spiritual battle going on. We don't war against flesh and blood, but against principalities. We know all that. But does this image make it different for you? Does thinking about this impact that?
I think it builds our faith and also helps us in worship.
Okay. Help in worship. Good.
When we see just how awesome he is and how protective his words become more alive, like when he says he's protecting us and watching us, and it's like, yes, he really is. And then he has his angels about, to work for us, for his purposes. And it just becomes more real. The spiritual realm, I think, draws us closer to the spiritual realm, because it's so easy to be in just this old world, with all the fear and different things, that we can experience.
Yeah, let's flesh that out a little bit. Let's take that again to another why, or what purpose that serves. If we think about being here and having that imagery, and Evelyn used some words like protection and faith and all of those things. If you would keep your vision, a heavenly vision all the time, how could that impact your day or your thoughts to be reminded of this spiritual realm surrounding you?
Freak you out.
When you have a vision board, at the beginning of the new year, you put a vision board up, or I have not been very good at that, but I know people get it really into that. But my husband and I do a vision when he went into his command, and it was very helpful for us to visualize where we were as a family, what our journey was, and the unexpected things along the way, and then how we were going to manage the journey together. And so it caused us to have this unity of vision when we went forward. I think that's what God is doing here, and through the vision he's giving to Elijah.
I know we all
Ezekiel.
do that now.
He's trying to this beautiful vision, this so full-fleshed vision of this power of God working behind the scenes, and for his the people, for him to be able to carry this vision and to the people, describe in detail to them, that they would say, yeah, we're on board, fired up, and see him, and they want to be part of that journey. So that to me is what it's really gonna go, okay, if God is working like this, and we know it's almost 23rd century, with the almost atomic nuclear imagery that they couldn't see back then. There's so much energy we can tap into of God working it's mystical in a way, but it's really, I don't know, it's palpable. You can touch it sometimes, so I don't know, that's what I get out of it. It's like it's a vision that he's trying to get the people to embrace.
Yeah.
Did I cut off?
What about us people then? Fran used some great words there, talking about bringing a unity of the vision, right? As we all look, our drawings, our graphics, everything may look completely different the way we did it. But do you suppose we all have, in some way, shape, or form, a very similar imagery of what this looks like and represents as we try to picture it? Think about that in terms of that unity that she was talking about, us having this same knowledge. And then I think, Fran, what you're explaining at the end was when we studied Revelation, there were some things that seemed very real and some things that seemed very spiritual. And so in my head, and you guys you probably remember this, I would say things like, that is not really all that floaty. It's actually fleshy, right? It's not just a floaty thing in heaven. This is your idea of being able to reach out and touch this realm. I think that's the idea for me that I'm walking away with, is that Like they're here. We've known that we have protection around us, and we have angels and we have beings around us, but they really are. Picture them on the earth as Elijah saw, as Ezekiel. Wow, we're all going to do that now. We're going to do it especially because I'm going to take us back there. Because of this, it requires something to be able to see this. First, you have to know it exists, which we all just found out. If you want to turn to 2 Kings 6, I'm going to look at 16 to 19. So remember when Elijah got taken to heaven in what he described as chariots of fire, who was the person who witnessed that and got to see it?
Elisha.
And because he saw it, then he got that double portion of the Spirit. So when we get to 2 Kings 6, 16 to 19, now we see Elisha still having the knowledge of that vision. He had eyes that believed and could see that realm. But does everyone have that? Let's see in 2 Kings 6, 16 to 19. So this is Elijah speaking, not Elijah, Elisha speaking in 16. And he said, do not be afraid, for those who are with us are greater than those who are with them. There was an army of chariots around them, a physical army. Then Elisha prayed and said, Lord, please open his eyes so that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Now, this is where we stopped before, but I just want to read the next part because this will really just continue to blow your mind. And when they came down to him, the chariots of fire, when they came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the word of Elisha. Then Elisha said to them, the chariots of fire, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he brought them to Samaria. Look at the relationship that he actually had with these angels of the Lord, these chariots of fire. But what did it require to be able to see that they were there?
Faith.
Spiritual eyes.
Spiritual eyes or faith. Again, he had that vision, and so he got to see them when Elijah was taken. And then it served him later that he could still see them. And he was able to share that and pray for someone else's eyes to be open. So hopefully that's one of the things, one of the purposes that this deep dive into Ezekiel 1 and these beings, it was my prayer that this would happen, that it has opened our spiritual eyes and vision to the fact that they're here and they're there. And who knows, as we go further on, what God may want us to see. But first, to be able to see them, we have to A, know that they exist and what it would look like to see them. B, believe that it's possible. And C, be on the watch to believe that we're surrounded by this realm that can give us more confidence in faith in what we do. And also just that awe and glory that some of you have mentioned, of just really keeping that picture of the Lord in front of our eyes with the kind of response that Ezekiel has when he realizes this is the likeness of the glory of the Lord, and he falls on his face. Other thoughts, questions? We finally made it through chapter 1. Any other words you weren't sure of? Anything you want to check on?
I'm so impressed with all of this that we can't even fathom, imagine even in our greatest dreams, like what it was exactly that Elijah saw, or that in this case, Ezekiel seeing, that we're invited to this place, this exclusive, all powerful, beautiful, mind-blowing place. We're invited there as sinners. I mean, these angels are they're absolutely reverent and holy and completely submissive and subjective to God. I kind of question why they weren't moving their head, probably because of that he controls. There's no distraction there. They're completely, it's what the Spirit says, right? And just, and holiness, like just holiness everywhere. It just blows my mind. How am I invited there?
Yeah.
And it's so moving. It's just moving. It makes you want to serve him even more.
Yes, hopefully getting to see all this will do that. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Evelyn?
I like when they talk about anytime when there's a vision and that it'll say they fell on their face. It's like, it's not like I got down on my knees, or whatever. It's like you can't help it. You just fall on your face, out of the response to the holy.
Right. And again, because we don't ever get to do that or have that happen to us, we know we have not fully been in that presence. That we will someday, though, right? The New Testament tells us we are going to have that moment of literally that radiance being all over us. And now we all know why, as Revelation tells us, there is no need for the sun or the moon or a lamp in the new heavens and new earth, because he is the light. And now we can see that it is full radiance and we don't need any other light. Okay, so your job now, we're actually going to start chapter 2. We have enough time that we're going to get you started on your homework, but your time now, okay, good night, Sarah, it's day 4 and 5 homework, is to keep this vision. And remember, we started to say we didn't know why yet. We knew all the other details of God giving him the vision, but we didn't know the why. Some of us did because we've read ahead, but now you want to be looking for the why as God continues to speak to him in the next chapters. So you're going to do day 4 and 5 for homework for, again, you've got 2 weeks. It's only 4 pages anyway. A bunch of the time will be observation. We're going to do the observation for chapter 2. They have you do start off with 3 to go all the way to 3:11. For tonight, we're just going to take chapter 2 separately, but we're also going to do it the way we do it. We're not going to start with their list. Tonight, as we read it together, if you would just on a first read through, look for God or the Lord or any references to him, I will read and you guys can mark. And then we'll see if we want to take it any further than that or not. But this will get you a start on connecting this to chapter 1. Does everybody have their chapter 2 observation worksheet handy? You guys all, I see you all getting it out there. I don't want to start reading till you're ready. And then you'll see on your own as well. I always like to test myself. I like to look first now, well, what words would I mark, before the homework would tell me, and I always mark more than they do, but I like looking before I look at their list. So there's one that's very obvious. You're going to get the main why. You're going to see it without any trouble at all. Okay, so I'm going to read, it's just 10 verses, so much shorter than chapter 1. And you guys are just going to look for the Lord. All right. So remember, chapter 1 ended with Ezekiel on his face and a voice speaking to him. So when I say, then he said to me, it's the voice he has just heard from heaven. Okay. Then he said to me, Son of man, stand on your feet that I may speak with you. As he spoke to me, the Spirit entered me and set me on my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. Then he said to me, Son of man, I am sending you to the sons of Israel. to a rebellious people who have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me to this very day. I am sending you to them who are stubborn and obstinate children, and you shall say to them, Thus says the Lord God. As for them, whether they listen or not, for they are a rebellious house, they will know that a prophet has been among them. And you, son of man, neither fear them nor fear their words, though thistles and thorns are with you, and you sit on scorpions. Neither fear their words nor be dismayed at their presence, for they are a rebellious house. But you shall speak my words to them, whether they listen or not, for they are rebellious. Now you, son of man, listen to what I am speaking to you. Do not be rebellious like that rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I am giving you. Then I looked, and behold, a hand was extended to me, and lo, a scroll was in it. When he spread it out before me, it was written on the front and back, and written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe. So all kinds of bells are going off for those of you who did Revelation, right? Like there's just a lot here. But let's continue to talk about the who. Before you look at the list they give you, as you're marking God, who else are you obviously going to notice in this chapter? Who is God speaking to?
Ezekiel.
Speaking to Ezekiel, and then through him, there's also going to, so you'll mark him. A lot of the times it's son of man and you, and this is one of those chapters. If you don't like a lot of marking, you might need to narrow down how often you mark Ezekiel, because there's a lot of pronouns. Okay. So there's two just in sentence one, or three really. Son of man, your feet, or me, son of man, your, and you. Now you may not want to mark all of those. I actually didn't mark a couple of them. Probably I just didn't even see them. Again, if you look at verse 2, me, my, I, and me. You probably don't want to mark all those. Even those of you who don't mind the busyness, you may not want to mark all those, like my feet. Those just may not be necessary. So as you look then at, he's speaking to Ezekiel without even looking or knowing. I think somebody else already said it. Who else is this word going to be for? Who's Ezekiel going to be speaking to?
House of Israel.
The house of Israel. I love that repeated description here. Think about that in terms of application when we talk about that. Anybody already know how God describes the house of Israel?
Rebellious.
Oh, yeah.
Rebellious. So if you're looking for what other words you're going to mark, you're probably going to mark the word rebellious, right? Because you already know. We read 10 verses and you heard it probably more than 10 times. It might be just about 10. There's a couple other words that go with that, but definitely rebellious. So those would be the who's that you're going to mark, right? God, Ezekiel, Israel, for sure. Okay, if you want to look on page 7, we can just glance at your list of what you're going to mark, and then we'll call it a night from there. This list would continue, they tell you, through 3:11, but I just did mine separately. I kind of just wanted to mark one chapter at a time. They probably had it go because it probably continues. It does continue. So you could go on through 3:11 if you want to. So after the people, you would see, well, there's one more. This one was capitalized. It tells you you're going to mark spirit. When it refers to God's spirit, you'd mark it like that. Letter B is the word we just talked about, right? On page 7, number 4, or day 4, 1B is rebellious or rebelled. Listen, which is a word that I usually try to remember to mark all the time, hear or listen. Lamentations and woe. If we're marking them here, that probably means we're going to see them again in the book. So they're not just going to be here. And then, of course, anything else that a word that you might always mark, or you would still probably watch for time and any where indicators. So that's the observation there. Then they have you finish up chapter 2 with your summaries. You're going to do a couple other things. You'll mark 3. It really isn't a lot to go through. Chapter 3 is longer again and has a huge important key for us when we get to discuss, when we do discussion. I'm sure we'll get through discussion of chapter 2 when we meet again. Chapter 3 is probably going to take us a little bit longer. All right, any questions about that? So now you see why God, now you know why God is speaking to Ezekiel. What you want to think about is, why would he give him that vision of that glory of heaven and radiance and these beings? How would that relate to what he wants him to do? And I don't know that scripture is going to tell you exactly, but of course we want to think about that. Think about, why does God give Ezekiel that vision for the assignment that he gives him? That would be a good thing to think about as you do this homework, because that's where my brain went. So I imagine I'll ask about it. Right. Any other questions?
Did you say this is for 2, that we have 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks. Our church has our conference next weekend.
Oh, okay.
So the Thursday ladies can't meet, so just taking it as a week off. So I have to try to keep you guys at the same pace. So yep, so you get next week off, and we will be back, I believe it's October 3rd. Is that right? Wow, that sounds crazy. I think, is that the Tuesday? I think it's the 3rd. It might not be the 3rd. Let's see. It is October 3rd. And so we will discuss, we'll start discussing the day 4 and 5 homework. So really what we'll do, you'll do the homework. We'll discuss Ezekiel chapter 2. We'll go through it, read it, talk about what's there. And then if we get to move on into chapter 3, we will. We're just going to, again, take these. I'll keep assigning homework, but we'll take whatever time we need for discussion. Right? Anybody else? I need to put that in an email.
Do we need to draw chapter 3?
I don't know. I can't remember if it told us to or not. It's been a while since I did my my homework. If there's a vision, anytime there's a vision, you might want to try to draw it. I don't even remember. Oh, you know what? No, I didn't draw it, but that's not a bad idea.
This is where he gets picked up.
Yeah, that
he gets
part
picked up.
And then the key part, the second part of the chapter. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So yeah, anytime if you're struggling to stop and visualize,
we have to put it in an animated form.
Yeah. At the very least, this is what we want to train ourselves to do, is close our eyes and put ourselves there and try to visualize it. And if that's a problem, then trying to draw it could be helpful. Even just some good little visual graphic things in your observation worksheets could be helpful sometimes. And that's some of the times where a marking symbol that's a little more pictorial than just highlighting, those can be helpful. I tried to do that with one of my symbols in chapter 3. Anybody else? All right, I am going to stop the video for tonight. I know I had some of you new to class that are missing this week watching. So again, let us know either in the comments or an email to me if you have any questions, and we'll try to keep you on track with where we are. See you in a couple weeks.